Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in today's video, I'm going to be revealing even more secrets to start climbing the ladder as a balanced druid in PvP. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a commentary over a high-rated solo shuffle lobby that I played in, going over the things that I'm thinking about, the things that I am trying to do, the mistakes that I am making, and how I'm going to try and correct them in the future so that I can win more matches in the future. I feel like one of the biggest mistakes for climbing the ladder is that it's really easy to just obfuscate your blame to somebody else on your team. And if you don't go back into your gameplay and look at what you did specifically to see if there's something else you could have changed, then you never really advance as a player and you're going to get stuck. So this is very good content to be able to unstuck yourself. So in this matchup, we're playing with a subtlety rogue. So we're playing single target build. Our goal is to try and crowd control the resto shaman when the rogue is stun locking the kill target. We decided to go shadow priest, which is the first mistake. I think shadow priest is not a very good target for this composition. I think warlock would have been better. We solar beam the warlock and we sap the shaman. Both players are crowd controlled. We kill off the grounding totem. We blind and we ship our incarnation with the blind. Jump out of range of the observer and just keep dumping damage. This forces dispersion. You can see kind of the first mistake that was made here, not necessarily by ourselves, but not by ourselves. The reason that I solar beamed the warlock and not the shaman is that resto shamans will play spirit walk and get out a solar beam for free. But the sap out of blind was not clean, which means the shaman got a couple of globals in between that crowd control. You don't want to leave any gaps between crowd control. And here the rogue is shadowy dueling the shadow priest while they're using dispersion. So they're not going to die. This is why I think the warlock would have been a better target, because if you shadowy duel the warlock, there's a chance they'll die through their defensives. But in this instance, the shadow priest is not going to. So we've used a lot of our crowd control and they've survived. So I'm going to cycle in the warlock. Now I'm focusing on defense, controlling the damage, slowing down the pace of the game, staying out of range of the observer. Here I move into range for it and I kill it. Should have probably stayed away from it. We could also use Barskin at the start of the game here. Our healer is feared. So this is kind of a mistake, honestly, on our part. This is what I mean by going back in the gameplay. We Barskin a bit late. Our healer was feared and it was all of their cooldowns, void form, tyrant, all that stuff. So bark skinning as soon as your healer is crowd controlled against a caster comp like this is going to be a good idea. Now the rogue is setting us up. We've got a cheap shot here on the shaman, so we want to chain that into a cyclone. So cheap shot into cyclone, this isolates the shadow priest. We get our 3 dots up with a single target build, and this forces the shaman to trinket. That was a good setup between the rogue and myself here in the shuffle. You just want to be paying attention to stuns on the healer when you're playing with a subtlety rogue and try and chain them into crowd control. Then I cycle on the shadow priest at low health to deny the recovery, try and make the shaman panic, switch the clone to the warlock. So now here, a mistake that the priest has made is we've feared the shaman right before they were coming off diminishing return for clone for our next setup, and the priest has compromised their positioning in allowing our rogue to get low to get this fear that doesn't matter, right? The priest is in earthen wall, it's on DR, we're not winning in a 2-second fear, and they have no dispersion and they have no trinkets. So honestly, this fear right here lost the game. So if you're playing solo shuffle and you see someone on diminishing return, don't put somebody on diminishing return for a 2-second CC unless the guy is really low. Like this guy's full health with the earthen wall, he's not going to die. So this is now going to delay our go by 17 seconds, and he's compromised his positioning, so he's getting hexed. This forces cloak and life swap. We bash the warlock with solar beam the healer, and you'll see right here, shaman spirit walks out of it and escapes. So honestly, in this matchup, solar beam would be better used on the demonic tyrant than the warlock. If you CC the demonic tyrant, then you remove all of their burst damage when there was a resto shaman or a healer that can get out of solar beam. I think that would have been much better from my point of view. Now we end up getting feared behind the pillar. Healer can't dispel us. We shipped a kidney smoke bomb onto the priest while I was in a fear. Kind of desperate, trying to make something happen. It forced a link, so it wasn't really the end of the world in this position. We get the spirit link. I see a kidney shot on the healer. I want to clone out of that. I get the clone. I get my 3 dots up, and I'm dumping all my astral power. We couldn't stop the MD though, so the mass dispel, because we didn't kidney and cycle at the same time. Kill Felbelusk, kill the observer. This is going to be too much damage for your healer to deal with. I barskin behind the pillar and start trying to heal myself. It's void form. It's VE. We don't have stuns. There's not really a point of being in the middle of the map in this situation. And I should be using my mass entanglement more on just the pets, like these Felguard pets here in the center of the screen that you can see. If I was just rooting those on cooldown, I'd be delaying a lot of damage. Here we get a blind onto the shaman. Rogue gets stunned and can't get more crowd control. He goes for a cheap shot, but now where I'm stunned, warlock just does a really good job on this go, honestly, of peeling. And now here's where the demonic tyrant, I could have solar beamed it. I cyclone it, but we're already dead at that point. So a lot of mistakes really added up into that point. I think for overall sustain, it would have been better to save the root solar beam for the warlock's pet, for the demonic tyrant. And we can't push in for diminishing. That was kind of out of my range. What I should say at the start of a lobby like that to the priest is, don't worry about fearing. to try and prevent that situation from happening. If you have a healer that has crowd control on your DR, you can just be like, hey, play passive, play defensive. I've got the healer. You don't need to fear the healer. Just keep us up. And then you don't have to worry about that ahead of time. That's how I would want to combat that in the future. Now in this next round, I'm playing with a Shadow Priest. I'm playing single target build, mostly because I want to be able to control the end of the match. And because the priest is not Gnome, my root solar beams will sit. If the priest was Gnome, I would have played AoE because I'd have no crowd control for the healer, and I'd want to just do damage and run them out of mana. We bash the rogue for stealth, really important opener, and root beam the solar beam the healer. We get a fear on the rogue. Fear doesn't really, it's not really that big of a deal, but the fear on the pets is nice. We ship the incarnation while the healer is CC'd. We get caught in a kidney shot while our healer's in a blind, so we're going to bark skin right away. We're not even going to hold on to that, and we're considering trinketing, but we really don't want to trinket unless it's shadowy duel. We jump away. We need to kill this observer as soon as possible. We're going to target it down, so we're not taking too much collateral damage. We get our stellar flares up while we're out of range of kicks and just start dumping star surges into the warlock. You can see with this build, when you're playing with a shadow priest, I'm not like conserving my damage like I was with the rogue. I'm just doing damage the whole time. Whatever's in my line of sight, I'm hitting. Here they've got a demonic tyrant out, and I've got no way to crowd control it. He gets a nice fear on the tyrant. That's going to remove the damage. We typhoon the rogue. We move back towards the pillar. I've got no bark skin. I really want them to go on the shadow priest, and they actually do. The kidney shot shadowy duel shadow priest who has dispersion and don't even get it. So now that shadowy duel is out of the way, I can play a bit more aggressive. But you can see I was posted up much more defensive towards the pillar, trying to get in a position where I could pre-bear form away from the rogue, and I'm dragging the rogue away from the warlock so I can range any annoying crowd control. Here my shadow priest gets smoke bomb, so I run into it and I bash the rogue. This forces the rogue to trinket. Probably should have ran into the bomb in bear form because it could swap to me. Then we're going to look for a cyclone. We get a cyclone to the rogue, controlling him, get some dots up onto the warlock. We got solar beam coming up soon, so we want to solar beam the healer. Rogue comes out of the cyclone, so we can start doing damage to either one. Warlock walls, so it's probably better to hit the rogue. Here in this position, I should have gotten closer to the priest. You always want to chain crowd control when you can, so I kind of lollygagged here. I don't know if my brain just turned off for a moment. This is what I mean by watch your own gameplay back, because here priest is not on DR for cyclone. I think he got mind games and maybe it broke early, so this mind games is probably better on the warlock. It might have got broken early, but cycloning the priest out of the solar beam would have been a lot better here in this position. We have no stuns, so we can't really kill him, and then he kind of just gets to wrap behind the pillar and survive. But it looks like my Shadow Priest was actually focus firing him, which is kind of a mistake on the Shadow Priest part. But for me, I should have got a Cyclone out of that. Here, the Rogue is going for Kidney Shot. My Shaman is feared, so we're going to Cyclone the Warlock, stop some damage. Now my healer's in a sap, so we're going to try and Cyclone the Rogue. He vanishes it. We're not able to get it. We're going to Frenzied Regen ourselves so we don't rot down or get swapped to, because we're off stun DR and our Shadow Priest isn't, so the Rogue could switch to us in a stun. We get a Cyclone onto the Rogue, peeling him away. Warlock's in the middle of the map. We're going to get our triple dots up onto the Warlock in the middle of the map here with our Wild Mushroom. Dump our Star Surges into him. This forces pain suppression. We're going to get Cyclone on the Priest. Shadow Priest getting really low, so I'm trying to move towards him because he's going to drop a Spirit Link. And the reason I know he's going to drop a Spirit Link is because Priest has no Disperse. Priest has no trinket. He's in a stun. Shaman doesn't have a lot of healing right now. We're really far behind. I know he's going to need to link, so I need to get close to him so I can give him my health. So we're going to get close to him, give him our health. We're still keeping the Warlock pretty low. We force Life Swap from the Warlock. We'll bash the Rogue for a peel. Try and just knock him away for a second. There's also a Demonic Tyrant out here in the middle of the map. So I cycle on the Warlock here. This is a mistake. I root the healer before Solar Beam is up. It's like 1 second away. But this is something that I'm actually doing consistently wrong. I don't know if you guys are doing it consistently wrong. Maybe not consistently, like maybe 10% of the time. You got to make sure that the Solar Beam is off cooldown, because if you root him even a second before it's up, he's going to be able to dispel it and get out of it for free. So then I panic and I Cyclone him, which he actually trinkets, which is kind of funny. You probably didn't need to trinket that. But if I had a Solar Beam here, I guess it would have forced the same thing. So compensating my mistake with Cyclone actually got the same result. And now we could have used the Solar Beam here onto the Tyrant. So you can see the Tyrant is free casting. So I didn't have a root here, which, let's say that's a mistake that you've made in this situation. You root before you Solar Beam is off cooldown. I should have probably switched the Solar Beam. It looks like I did, and I used it on the Warlock. In reality, I think it's better to do it on the Tyrant. So in this game, I think that I did a poor job of managing the Demo Lock's pets so far when playing against the Demo Lock. And that's something that I would like to improve moving on to like the next lobby that I queue. We get stunned here. The Rogue isn't on us, but we're going to go into Bear Farm. We're going to Frenzied Regen, move towards the Shaman, Cyclone the Rogue, jump towards the Shaman. We're going to line of sight this Observer rather than kill it because we're too low. If I attack the Observer right now, I'll die. So line of sighting or max ranging the Observer is good. We knock the Rogue. We knock all of the pets. I'm trying to reduce as much damage as I can now at this point because we're all basically dead. We get a Wild Mushroom up for 3 dots onto the Rogue, but he vanishes it. need to kill this Fel Obelisk right here, so I'm not killing the Fel Obelisk, This is really bad. It's giving the Warlock a lot of damage. I rooted the pets, though, and I jumped away, which was good in this position. They stun up the Shaman. I'm starting to chase the Warlock down, trying to finish him, spamming Moonfire, squeeze out that Star Surge at the last second, and barely win. And you can see that we ended up winning this game on mana anyways. So with a Shadow Priest in this situation, I think it likely would have been better for me to play AoE as opposed to single target. So a lot of times players are trying to like talk to me and ask me like, what spec, what build should you play? Single target is really good with single target classes. Like the Sub Rogue, I think I should have been single target. I was just experimenting with this because I'd been playing AoE pretty much every lobby. I just wanted to see how good I could do with the single target build. But that game we ended up winning on mana. So AoE would have been fine, and I could have used my solar beams on the Tyrant to stop damage and just outpace the other team. And that's again what I've already pointed out as a criticism. Here we've got another Subtlety Rogue game, so we want to peel the Rogue off of our allies as the match is about to start. This way we're going to reduce a lot of damage. See the healer in a sap, Rogue's going to open, we solar beam the Shadow Priest, we try and go for a bash, we pre-evasions, we get stunned, we skin, just respecting the fact that I'm stunned. We can go into bear form right after that. Warlock does a good job peeling me. That's what you want to do with a Rogue, is whoever's not getting attacked is peeling the Rogue off the other person, and then you're going to be in a good spot. We got an Observer down, we're stunning the Shaman. We're not going to be solar beaming the Shaman unless it's on a cast, because he's just going to Spirit Walk out of the root beam. We can use solar beam on the Shadow Priest to stop life swap or something like that, or to stop damage. We're kiting the Rogue out in the middle of the map to try and scare him from chasing. We pre-bear form as we see him moving towards us, because we want to be in bear form to be in a stun. We can Frenzied Regen and Renewal and then go for a Cyclone. We had a Cyclone on the Rogue, really low HP. Shadow Priest Mass Dispels it, so we can use solar beam to stop something like that. Here again, the Priest gets a fear on the Shaman. I didn't type anything about it, but in this type of matchup as a Disc Priest, you don't need to fear. You just need to sit far away from crowd control and PvE. So typing that in the waiting room would have been a good idea for me to try and make sure that my healer isn't compromising their positioning. Rogue Shadow Steps behind the pillar. I see that as a big opportunity and just dump all of my burst into him behind the pillar with no cloak. Warlock did a good job pulling him into that spot, and then obviously you're going to want to have the awareness to see that that's happening, because sometimes you don't even need crowd control. If you can pull them out of line of sight, you're going to be able to just win the game that way. So it can be a really good idea to do that. Here we've got the Shadow Priest again. So I could have switched to AoE, and I likely should have switched to AoE with a Shadow Priest, especially in solo shuffle. Maybe not so much in rank 3s because Dampany isn't as high. I guess into Shaman, you're probably not going to run the Shaman out of mana though. So single target will have a higher chance of winning the game before your Priest is in. There's some debate here, I think, for single target being better than AoE, just because my healer is more likely to before the resto Shaman is. So I need as much kill opportunity as possible. We're going to stealth again with the Rogue. We see the saps. We start sprinting as soon as we see a sap, getting ready to jump into position for a bash. He did pre-evasion last round, so I'm anticipating that. I'm going to need to try and get behind him. So we bounce right behind him and bash him. We fear the Rogue. Again, fear is not really needed if I'm peeling correctly. They probably don't play a lot with players who peel in the opener. We get coiled with all of the pets here. So you can see Demonic Tyrant. So we fixed that mistake in this round. We start root beaming the Tyrant because Shaman's just going to get out of it anyways. And this is going to remove a huge amount of damage in the opener. We ship our Orbital Strike here onto the Rogue and the Warlock. Warlock gates away, so we'll swap over to the Rogue. Mushroom to get our 3 dots. Dump our Star Surges. Dump our instant Lunar Strikes. And try to get as much damage on the Rogue as possible. If our Shadow Priest pulls the Rogue behind the pillar, it would be really good here in this position. With where we are at currently, but you can also just play out in the open. A little harder to play out in the open with this comp just because we don't have an interrupt really, right, with 2 priests and a Boomkin. We're just dumping damage into the Shadow Priest, pumping a lot of pressure. Gonna go for a Cyclone onto the resto Shaman, keep our dots up onto the Warlock, keep free casting, start forcing him away. Here we see a cheap shot, so we wanted to try to start using Cyclones. We get cheap shot, a little bit too close to the Rogue. We don't want to be close enough that the Rogue can literally, like, you can see how he's triangling between all 3 of us and getting stuns on all 3 of us. You don't want your positioning to be like that. You want the Rogue to have to go really big distance to get stuns on more than one target. Cyclone up the Warlock, keep pressure up onto the Rogue, bash the Rogue here, Typhoon him back into line of the Shadow Priest as he was trying to run away, and start moving towards the Shaman. Tried to lock him on cast. He faked me here. Sometimes that's going to happen. And now I've got to be worried about Tyrant because my Solar Beam might not be up for it. We kill off the Observer. Unfortunately, we have to disperse. They're going to swap to me off the dispersion, so we're going to Bark Skin. Pretty much anytime it's a Shadow Dancer and Rogue, I have to use Bark Skin. We kill off the Fel Obelisk there with a Star Surge, removing a lot of the extra damage from the Warlock. We Cyclone up the Rogue, getting pressure onto the Warlock. Instant Lunar Strikes into Solar Eclipse. Dump our Star Surges with 3 dots up. Grounding Totem comes down. We want to snipe that. Grounding Totem goes away. Caught in a Lightning Lasso for a second. We're pulling the Rogue back behind the pillar, so I'm going to sprint my team. We got to run away. That's Demonic Tyrant, and I don't have a Solar Beam. You can see using the Solar Beam on the healer, super risky in a Demo Warlock lobby. Just much better using the Tyrant. I knocked the Tyrant away from pushing in on top of us, which we were able to mitigate its damage quite a bit by just staying behind the pillar. I think it got 1 bolt off, but it still forced life swap even with just 1 bolt off. This is a good fear in the situation. If it's off DR and we can get a full CC with a fear, it's not that bad. But when it's on DR, it's where it becomes worse, especially when the DR is just about to reset. You don't want to be shooting crowd control in that window. But here, that full fear got a trinket. We're bashing up the Warlock in the middle of the map. We're going to root all the pets. We're going to kill off the Observer. We're focusing on defense. Rogue is shadowy dueling. We're trying to control damage right there in that situation. But we still have to life swap. We even got a Cyclone onto the Rogue. So now we've got Incarnation available. We could shoot a big orbital strike. We Solar Beam the Warlock on cast so he can't run away. We need to try and snipe that grounding. It was a really good grounding by the Shaman here. We get another good full fear. So again, if it's full, I think it's worth going for the crowd control. We get a stun of the Shaman. Warlock's at 1%, but we're going to swap to the Rogue. We're not going to stop just doing damage because the Warlock is low. You want to just keep damage going out because otherwise the Warlock might recover. But he doesn't. He dies to dots behind the pillar, and we are able to win that round as a result. So you can see kind of some of the lessons from this lobby so far, which I think I went 4-2 of it in it overall, is that when you're playing with a Shadow Priest into a healer that runs out of mana, AoE is probably going to be the better build. When you're fighting a Shaman, you don't really want to Solar Beam them because they can just get out of it. Especially if they got a Demo Warlock, you want to be Solar Beaming the Warlock's Demonic Tyrant to remove it. Need to be rooting Demo Warlock pets more on cooldown. I think that could have put us into a lot better of a position in terms of just overall damage reduction. And then staying far away from Subtlety Rogues so that you have time to react. Like in the round before this, I had time to get into bear form and tank the damage, and it was a lot less scary. But a lot of times in this other round, I wasn't able to get into bear form because I was too close, and it got really scary. We had to use a lot more cooldowns than we otherwise would have needed to. So I hope that this video has revealed some of the kind of secrets and kind of like the mechanics of how important it is to go back and look at what you're doing in the game, review the mistakes and try and fix them. I'm doing it basically for you here today with this video, giving you some ideas for yourself to do it, but I recommend this highly for yourself to do with your own gameplay, is to just record it and look back at it, or get somebody to look at it for you. Possible that I could offer that service as well if you guys are interested. I'll have a link to my Discord down below if you're interested in purchasing that type of service where I review your gameplay for you and I can go over mistakes and we can try and improve your gameplay just as I am basically for myself right here, because a lot of times it can be difficult to identify exactly what it is you're doing or what it is other people are doing in the match to make that type of improvement. But again, the aim of the channel is to help you guys play better, get better, and be better. So thank you very much for watching the video today, and I will see you in the next one.